Warning, MF Uncensored contains adult language and discussion. Listener discretion is advised.
We're a couple of misfits. We're a couple of misfits. What's the matter with misfits? That's where we fit in. We're not Duffy and Dilly. Don't go around willy-nilly. Seems to us kind of silly that we...
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MF Uncensored. Don't forget, if you guys are listening to us on the go, you can find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also find more of our content on our website, themisfitfaction.com. There you find links to not only this show, but some of our other shows like the Multiverse Fancast and Cinematic Adventures. And speaking of Cinematic Adventures, I'm Paul, and with me is the co-host of Cinematic Adventures and the star of Your Mom's Diary, Sean. Sean, how are you today?
Who's mom?
Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. I'm good.
Oh, okay.
You just asked how I was. I'm good.
That's fair. I asked a very simple question. I got a very simple answer.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Misfit Faction Media Network.
Oh,
.com.
No. It's the misfitfaction.com.
Oh.
You know, my intro is so good.
It is.
That I did an interview, I think it was about a month ago with Ebony Alchemy, and she literally said, I thought that was pre-recorded and that you just like edited it in. I was like, nah, just pure.
I say this like a lot.
You know, it's even funnier. Like, we don't have like a lot of outtakes from the show.
We could.
Oh my God, we could. I don't think we really messed up the intro though that much.
Early on we did.
Early on you
Well, it
did.
depends if Ronnie's here.
You did.
Oh, I always messed it up.
You still do. Misfit Faction Media Network.
I think it sounds better.
It's such a long name, though.
I'm just saying it sounds better. I didn't
It's
say
a long name for the website. That's the actual name of the network. All right, shut up. But so we are back, and we are continuing our conspiracy theory month.
What was your first episode on this?
If aliens were real, and if the government's covering it up. Ironically,
Something just happened.
Ironically enough, like 2 days after posting, like all this new evidence came out. Like all these people are saying, "Oh, the government definitely has it. Like they have the alien technology that." And we're like, "Damn it!" Try and get on that hype train a little bit.
Seriously.
Yeah, but it's so funny how that sort of thing happens. We broke it open. I'm pretty sure we actually.
Well, if we were going to break that open, then hopefully our subject today might break something open.
Or if you guys don't hear from us again, it's because we were
crap.
taken out.
Yeah.
Government hit team led by Sean Connery. Because he's actually still alive and he's been locked up.
Paul, you got a red dot on your chest.
Oh, damn it, not again. I hate when this happens, but anyway. So we are here, and we're going to talk about one of the most, popular, one of the most well-known conspiracy theories out there. And let's paint a picture, though, first. Sean, it is November 22nd, 1963. A simpler time, but also a way more complicated time. A time of Cuban Missile crises, bad times with Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
A time
Bad
where...
times with Russia.
Well, I mean, that's not specific anymore. That could be any time at this point. A time where an important political figure could drive around in a topless limousine and not have to worry about anything.
Yeah, in a very, very non-democratic state like Texas.
Yeah, Texas. But anyway, and unfortunately, on that same day, shots rang out and changed the course of American history.
Mm-hmm.
Forever.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I am talking about the assassination of Mayor McCheese, as referenced in Family Guy. No, we are here to talk about the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Now, Sean here, I brought Sean in because A, availability, B, desperation, and C, he is a big fan of the movie. Oh, I lost him. He took his headphones off to laugh. I'm very impressed with myself. But also, really, C, he is a big fan of the film JFK, starring Kevin Costner.
Yes, directed by the great Oliver Stone.
Yes. So, was that your first foray into this conspiracy theory level?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, before that, it was, if you could believe it, I distinctly remember a illustrated book in elementary school of JFK, and there was like an illustration of obviously not him getting killed, but it was, the day in Dealey Plaza, and it wasn't until I watched that movie where I really knew anything about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. I think I watched that movie for the first time in 7th grade, and we didn't learn about U.S. history till 8th grade.
I would say even later at that point.
Because, we had to learn about, freaking the Roman Empire and all that stuff.
All that stuff that's really relevant to what we do.
Oh, my God.
American education is wild. You could tell me the Pythagorean theorem when I was in 6th grade, but I still don't know how to do my taxes.
But yeah, so the movie JFK was my introduction to obviously the conspiracy theories of the JFK assassination, but it also sent me down a wormhole. Like, I bought books on it, I watched documentaries on it, and yeah. I'm not as bad as I was, but I still believe in it.
Oh, I completely believe in it.
Still believe in it.
I am 100% convinced.
Like, I hate it when people come out and steadfastly say that it was not a conspiracy. It was clearly one man. I'm like, okay, yes, you've proven that one man could do it, but that doesn't mean he did do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a couple of different theories.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, between this and probably the Lincoln assassination, they're the most prevalent assassinations in American history.
There's been 4 assassinations of U.S. presidents. It was Lincoln, it was Garfield, McKinley, and then JFK. And then obviously there was an attempt on Reagan, but he survived.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been, he was the 5th. Oh, there was actually an attempt on Teddy Roosevelt, and he survived. So,
Oh yeah. Didn't he continue doing his speech?
He
or
did.
something
He had his speech like folded like 10 times, and it or something, and I think that stopped it, and it still hit him and still went into his body, obviously, but not where near the force of it would have killed him.
Well, I mean, you've heard the pen is mightier than the sword. The word is mightier than the bullet, apparently.
Apparently.
But it's wild to think. And there have been lone gunmen assassinations.
Mm-hmm.
What was the one you mentioned that he had like Catcher in the Rye or something?
That was the Reagan one. Mark David. No. I keep getting the two of them mixed up, between the one who shot at Reagan and the one who assassinated John Lennon.
Oh, I think that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking of John Lennon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
He had Catcher in the Rye in his pocket or something stupid like that.
And then the one who shot Reagan was obsessed with Jodie Foster or something like that.
Because that makes actual sense.
I'm just saying.
It's weird because we've had a long history of very, very strange people in America.
But I just realized, and why it just hit me, that this November it'll be 60 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Conspiracy right there.
60 years. So and I'm sure there'll be some, specials about it, because I know there was a big one 10 years ago for the 50th, and then, that's when they came out with the whole, we've established that we know that Oswald did it by himself.
Yeah, sure. Just to be killed by
sure.
Yeah, sure.
Whatever.
But so, also the biggest thing about this one, it is the first televised event of something like this happening.
Well, you didn't see it live. You didn't see...
But the television coverage was...
Oh, absolutely. This is television, and this is television. So this is 1963. Television has been around...
Excuse me.
Just about a decade, a little over a decade. So basically, at this point in time, everybody in the world, anybody in the country has a television in their house.
Mm-hmm.
TVs,
you must be
I
rich.
also think this is really what drove the news to become as big as it's become. This is up there with the moon landing. This is up there with the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. The where were you moment when this happened? Where were you when JFK was assassinated? Where were you when the Beatles played on the Ed Sullivan? Where were you when the moon landing happened?
Unfortunately for us, it's where were you when 9/11 happened? That's ours.
For
us millennials, that's our generation defining.
And for everybody our age, we were in school.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of those moments in the 60s, and this sadly was a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Bobby Kennedy also happened in the 60s. Those weren't as big as this because it's a president, but those were significant.
Oh, incredibly significant.
Absolutely significant.
And they have their own fair share of conspiracies as well. Martin Luther King and all that.
I'm not as big. When I say I'm not as big, I'm not
well-versed.
knowledgeable in any of the assassination conspiracies of either Martin Luther King or Bobby Kennedy. But yeah, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to go over the actual?
So let's talk about JFK as a president. As a president, what we don't really. We are way too young to know too much about his presidency, but what do you think JFK besides his assassination? What do you think?
Well, I can only tell you what I've seen through movies, what I've seen. Even in school, we didn't really learn a lot about JFK. We learned about the assassination, but we really didn't learn a lot about JFK. You had the Cuban Missile Crisis, which, I can't imagine what that was like for them. For that, because the public didn't know till about halfway through those 13 days, But to think that at any second, the world can end because you got nukes pointing at each other to me is just, I mean, we're kind of dealing with it now, but not, I don't think at the extent of what that was.
Well, this is also the first, the start of, the fear mongering of, duck and cover. Get under your desk. You'll be fine.
Yeah, well, because they knew there was no chance anybody would survive.
Well, Corey Matthews said it best. Kiss your butt goodbye. Yeah, Boy Meets World reference.
There you go.
Yeah, put that in your bank. I don't know what that means.
Put it in my bank?
Sure. We're gonna put that in the fun fact fanny pack.
But I mean, the Kennedys are a fascinating family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so many things.
You want to talk about a cursed family? I mean, just look at the list. I mean, from the older brother dying in World War II,
mm-hmm.
the oldest sister perishing in a plane crash with her husband, the father succumbing to a stroke, JFK, Bobby Kennedy, JFK Jr.
I'd even say Marilyn Monroe we can throw in there too.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm just talking about what's happened to their family, let alone what they're involved with,
but
just
God.
Their family is,
Well, unfortunately, JFK, it was like a Hollywood secret. Everybody knew about it, but nobody said anything about it, that he was having affairs all over.
Absolutely.
And Marilyn Monroe was arguably the biggest one.
Big one. Again, that would be interesting to see if they ever do like a movie of that whole thing. But there's rumors that they were somehow involved in her death. Obviously, Joe DiMaggio banned the Kennedys from her funeral.
Mm-hmm.
He would not allow any Kennedy to even be present at her funeral. I mean, it really is just an incredible
time of history,
series of events. There's a great PBS documentary on JFK, and it goes from, when he was a kid. He was a very sick kid, dealing with a lot of, different, what's the word I'm looking for? Maladies. A lot of people think he wasn't going to survive past 20. The older brother was the one that was being groomed to, go into politics. JFK really had no interest in it.
Which is hilarious.
It wasn't until after his brother died that, basically his father put all that on him. And, then we get into him getting elected president, which a lot of people still think, the Kennedys bought the election.
They can't do that in America. Money doesn't dictate everything.
Oh, no, never.
Oh,
never.
It's funny. I was talking to my dad recently, and for those of you guys who don't know, my dad is one of the smartest guys that I know, and he's an exceptionally hard worker, always providing. And we were talking about when the lottery was up to $500 million, or basically, I think it was like 1.9 billion.
It was over a billion.
And you would basically, after taxes, you'd walk away $600 million.
Yeah.
And my dad, who does very well for himself, even said, he's like, that kind of money changes your entire life, and there's no going back. And I was like, man, in our world, and I'm not even just saying in our country in general, but that kind of money, $500 million.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. And that's just a lump sum. That is not, you talk about the Kennedys, and you're talking favors, you're talking connections, you're talking, behind the, what's that secret group, the Bindenberg group or something like that. And basically it's like the cabal of the most powerful people.
Oh, really?
There's the Illuminati theories. Money and influence are the biggest determining factors in our world today.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not a conspiracy theory podcast by any stretch of the imagination, but it is not within, it's not without reason to think that there is so many people pulling strings behind the scenes with money and power and using political divide and cultural divide to their advantage.
Yeah.
Our country's a mess right now. And I consider myself patriotic. I love my country. I want what's best for my country. But at the same time, I drive around and I'm like, what the hell is happening here? And we're in a very weird... New York's for those of you guys who don't know, we are in New York. We won't tell you where because Melanie gets mad whenever I say exactly where we are. But our area is much more red, even though the city is so blue.
The state is blue, but we're in a red.
A red area of the state. New York's a very strange state with that. But you look at the way that everything is, it is not outside of the realm of possibility to think with all these conspiracies. And JFK is a big one because there's a lot of things that happen with this. So November 22nd, 1963, as we mentioned, Kennedy he was in a motorcade with a top-down limo, and ever since this, they have not had an open motorcade. The Pope has the Pope Mobile,
Yep.
which is not something I just made up. That is an actual, that's what
No,
they call
there
it.
is.
And
I think the only president, Jimmy Carter, on his inauguration day, he walked like out in the open along.
and that was a big thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big thing in 1963, the fact that he was driving around in a non-covered.
But that was also Kennedy. He was the young, hip president.
Yeah, but I it's. Again, it's crazy. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
there was so many things that went wrong that day that should have been handled much better, and we'll get into that obviously.
but from the Texas Book Repository,
Depository.
excuse me, Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly, we say allegedly because even though obviously we're not detectives back in 1963, but what is
No,
the
if
word?
you look at history, the history is that
History
Lee Harvey
says
Oswald
this is what happened.
assassinated President Kennedy on the 22nd, 1963 of November. 63, yeah,
Yep.
whatever I just said.
And then November 22nd.
Thank
and
you.
then Lee Harvey Oswald was taken into custody, and
He was killed.
He was killed
a
by
day
Jack
later.
Ruby.
Yep, Jack
2
Ruby,
days later.
which still boggles my mind.
He walked up to him and
Walked up
lit
to
him
him
up.
in front of endless cops and